Hello and welcome to A Postdoc's Journal, the show that takes you through my journey into and eventually out of academia as a postdoctoral research scientist. My name is Simit Patel. Thank you very much for joining me. For those of you who are perhaps new to the show, each week what I do is I read out entries from my own personal journal from 12 years ago, back when I was working in academia as a research scientist. And then what I do is I have a little reflection about it with the benefits of 12 years of hindsight. So if you are a student or a postdoc, or if you're just generally struggling a bit in academia, I hope that by sharing my own personal experience with you, that perhaps you feel a little bit less alone. In today's episode, we're going to go right back to the beginning, actually a little bit before the beginning. This is actually a journal entry from the day after my postdoc interview, which is actually before my postdoc started, obviously. So this is in December, so it's just before Christmas. It's grey, it's miserable. I remember sitting in a cafe down the road from the building I was going to go have my interview in. I remember going to the building first. I got there early. I like to get to places early. I went to the building and it was a totally dilapidated building in Germany. It looked like it had been abandoned. So I had some serious question marks as to whether I got the right address, and B, is this really where I want to spend the next couple of years doing my postdoc? But I remember I got there early, I saw this dilapidated building, I went down the street to a cafe, and then I collected my thoughts. I was super nervous, and then I went in and I did the interview, and I actually got offered the job there and then at the interview. And this journal entry is actually from the day after that, so I must have still been in Germany, probably in Frankfurt, probably at the airport, and I was totally feeling out of my depth. I felt like a total imposter. And so that's what you're about to hear. So have a listen to the reading now, and I'll be back at the end with some thoughts after 12 years of hindsight. Enjoy. December 2011. I had the interview yesterday, and I got the job. I gave my talk to about 10 people, I kept it in time, I spoke well as usual, and I handled the questions okay. We then had the interview, which was more like a chat. They told me what they wanted to do, what they wanted from me, and basically asked me if that was okay. They basically said they want to use me as a bioinformatician to analyze data for various projects that were going on. Plus, they wanted me to develop my own research program. I didn't feel good about any of the answers I gave to their questions. I told them that I have no experience in bioinformatics, high computation, or programming. I'm still not entirely sure what bioinformatics actually is. I went on to say that it will be a learning curve for me, and I have no doubt in my ability to do it. I also feel disappointed that I gave nothing in the way of my own ideas. I didn't demonstrate that I would actually bring anything to the group. I got the impression that one of the interviewers, not the final decision maker, was clocking on to the fact that I am not much of a value add to the group. I accidentally said that I actually wanted to do lab work. The truth is, I don't really know what I want. I don't know what I am as a scientist. I'm not good enough of a computer person or statistics person to be a bioinformatician. I guess I'm more of a lab person than anything, but I don't like it most of the time. I could quite easily give it up, but if I'm not in the lab, what am I? Part of me thinks that I'm an all-rounder, that likes analysis and fieldwork and lab work and teaching and writing and everything else. But I think the truth is I just haven't found my niche yet. I think it's going to be goodbye to the lab. I don't love working in the lab that much. I probably hate it more than I love it. It's just that I'm not really much of a computer or statistics geek. I like to maybe see that as a strength. Perhaps my ignorance and lack of understanding is an asset that I can cultivate to help communicate bioinformatics to non-bioinformaticians. However, it felt like the decision about me was made before I even arrived for the interview. And they already knew that they wanted me. But I still don't really understand why. But I am apprehensive about the skills gap. Not having the basic building blocks of knowledge in place that I really should have by now. The building blocks that somehow I've gotten away with not needing up until now. What do I actually bring to the table? My thing is outlier detection. A very specific type of data analysis. And everything else I know how to do in the lab, in the field, etc. are just the steps leading up to performing outlier detection. Okay, thank you very much for listening to that. Okay, yeah, so I've just collected some thoughts after having read that back. Actually, hearing it back brought back some tough memories, actually. That was a tricky time in my life. For context, I was 26 years old at the time, and I was, in my sort of mid-20s. I had a lot of insecurities at the time, some of which I still have. There's just a few sort of themes that stood out to me, and I just want to go through those with the benefit of hindsight. Before we get into the reflection, I want to ask you a quick question. Do you ever worry about your paper being rejected because the English isn't good enough? One thing I've always been good at is writing, but I know not everyone finds that easy. Perhaps English isn't your first language, or for some reason, the words you write just don't quite capture what you want to say. Good English can enhance your scientific credibility, increase the chance of your article being accepted, and speed up the peer review process. Whether you're a research scientist, a scientific writer, or part of a dynamic biotech company, I want to help you with my professional copy editing and proofreading services for scientific English. Enhancing the clarity and precision of writing has been an integral part of my professional life in academia and in the biotech industry for over a decade. If you need a native English speaker with a solid scientific background and a professional certification in proofreading to refine and polish your writing, I would love to help you. Please visit simitpatel.com, that's simitpatel.com for more information. Thank you, and now back to the show. Overall, I wasn't giving myself enough credit at the time. I gave a pretty negative assessment of my own performance. I could only think about the negatives. And at the time, I remember thinking that on some level, that was a good thing. That was a good trait. I thought that by being negative about everything, that showed a sign of self-awareness. Surely by being objective rather than subjective, that makes me a better scientist. I used to think that being objective meant seeing all the negative things. At the time, I didn't realize the damage that did. I actually thought it was a good thing, that I didn't need someone else to point out bad things in my own performance. I could do it all myself. I used to think that was a strength. I used to think that was a good thing. But at the time, I just didn't realize the damage that can do. Because what that does is it slowly chips away at your own self-confidence. What I was doing is I created my own negative narrative about myself. And I was writing that narrative literally in my journal. I obviously actually did a good job answering those questions in the interview. I wouldn't have actually been offered the job otherwise, there and then. I said that I didn't understand why they offered it to me. But the truth is, when I reflect on it, I had actually been in touch with that research group for several months prior to being called for that interview. I actually met the PI at a conference in Spain earlier. Was it earlier that year? I think it was earlier that year. And at that conference, I actually presented my PhD research, and I made a good impression. I had many conversations with the PI, and we actually stayed in touch over several months. I actually helped them write a grant application, and I reviewed some documents for them as well. And they actually, contacted me saying a position has opened up in our lab. We'd be grateful if you considered applying for it. I actually bought a lot of good faith with that group. before I even arrived at the interview, and I had worked on it for many months. And that was all down to my own presentation skills, my networking skills, my writing skills, my communication skills, my knowledge, my expertise. I actually did a lot before that interview even happened. I did well, and I don't think I was giving myself enough credit there. It was funny to hear myself say that I don't actually know what bioinformatics actually is. That's quite amusing, because it was true at the time, frankly. It's funny because by the time I ended up leaving academia, that was actually my specialty, and that actually is my specialty these days. I now work in scientific software, specializing in easy-to-use bioinformatics software. It's also funny that I made that point about using my lack of understanding as an advantage. That's actually what I built my entire career outside of academia on. By working for easy-to-use bioinformatics software companies. It's funny to read that back 12 years on, because it's like I had planted that seed of an idea at the start of, before my postdoc even begun. And then I didn't realize it at the time, but that seed actually grew into my career outside of academia. So it's funny to see that. It was interesting to read about my sort of lack of identity, my lack of identity. I had a bit of an identity crisis at the end of my PhD going into my postdoc. I didn't really understand where I fitted in. And I think this is a common thing for a lot of PhD scientists, where I felt at the time that the only thing I was trained for was my particular project. And my particular project was so specific that I felt like I was totally ill-prepared for anything else other than how to do my one project. And more generally, I think I was trying to put myself in a box to make sense of my own career path. I know, and probably all of you know by now, people don't fit into boxes. That's just what people do to try and make sense of things when things are unclear. In my PhD, I actually spent a lot of time in the lab. And as I said in the journal entry, I didn't like it very much. Most of it was contending with failure. My PCRs wouldn't work all the time. And every time something went wrong, I would always blame myself. And I'd again, that goes back to that. I used to think the negative self-talk was actually a good thing. It was good that I took responsibility for my own problems. It was good that I always blamed myself. It was good that I was critical. But yeah, as I discussed earlier, that was probably me being too hard on myself. And more generally, I think that I never really developed a healthy relationship with failure. And I never really learned how to sort of be okay with failure. I mean, when you do anything in the lab, those of you who do work in the lab, you know that you have to contend with failure on a daily basis almost. Experiments don't work, things fail. You don't know why. You spend weeks and weeks problem solving, spending hours and hours of time, and nothing works. That can be hard to deal with emotionally. And I just never learned how to deal with the emotional side of contending with failure. And I think that was evident in my general relationship with the lab and why I didn't want to do it anymore.
So there you have it. From the very beginning, you could tell I was plagued with self-doubt, feeling totally out of my depth, and feeling like I did not deserve to be there. Classic imposter syndrome. 5 or 6 weeks later, I had packed my bags, I had moved to Germany, and I was ready to start my new life as a postdoc. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope that was valuable for you in some way. Please join me next week, where we jump to about 2 weeks into my new postdoc. I give my first impressions of my new colleagues, I agonize over small decisions, and I struggle to adjust to my new life in a foreign country. Until then, please be kind to yourself and have a great week. Brood about it, brood until the day. One day I will find the words to say.
Thanks again for listening to A Postdoc's Journal. I've been your host, Simit Patel. If you've enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others who you think might find it helpful. or you can post about it on social media. If you can relate to anything in this episode, or perhaps you're experiencing something similar, I would love to hear from you. Please feel free to email me. My contact information is in the show notes. Thanks again.